Okay, so we're done with lines, so let's proceed to another element of art, the shape or form. So sometimes shape or form, or shape and form, are used interchangeably, but technically they have these particular differences. Now, let's take a look at this picture. Shape would be on my right, and form would be on my left, since I am facing this image, diba? So what is the difference between these two? Are they the same, or is it just the color that differs? So before we can answer that, let's define first what is shape. So shape um, are two-dimensional. So looking at any shape, you can practically identify its two dimensions, the height and the width. While form, on the other hand, is three-dimensional, meaning that it has the height, the width, but this time we can also see the depth. So that is the difference between the shape and the form. Going back to this, so as again, shape is two-dimensional. It has height and width, but has no depth, so we can easily identify the shape of most objects without having an extra visual information. So that's why I said a while ago that shape is on my right, this one, because it only has two dimensions, the height and the width. While form is three-dimensional object, so it has three dimensions, the height, the width, and the depth. Form usually have weight and solidity. Sometimes they have a continuous surface like a ball, or many surfaces like a box. That's why I said a while ago that form is in my left, so this one. And that is primarily the difference between the two. One is flat and the other has volume to it. Okay, so now you have the basic knowledge of the difference between the shape or form. So let's continue. So we have different types of shapes. So we have the natural shapes and the abstract shapes. So natural shapes may be interpreted realistically, or they may be distorted. So those we see in nature, such as shapes of man, animals, or trees, those are what we call the natural shapes, while abstracts are formed after the artist have or has drawn out the essence of the original object and made it the subject of his work. So I think I have already discussed this in functions of art bato, or subject and content. So how abstracts are actually made by artists. So here is an example of a natural shape that we can see, like we can see them all over, no? So, and this is an example of an abstract shape. So, this happens when the artist has already drawn out the essence of the original object, making it a little bit more um, abstract. Okay, another type of shape is non-objective shapes. It defines a type of abstract art that is usually, but not always, geometric and aims to convey a sense of simplicity and purity. Now, while positive and negative shapes, artists and designers have used shapes as the main structural element for drawing by reducing the subject to a series of large, simple, correctly proportioned shapes, then breaking these initial shapes down into progressively smaller shapes as detail increases. Now, the process of accurate drawing is greatly simplified. Okay, so here Examples of non-objective shapes. Sometimes the best way to approach a drawing is to forget about the object being portrayed and see things simply as arrangement of abstract shapes. Here we have an example of positive and negative shape. So in paintings and drawings, positive and negative shape often represent a solid form such as a bowl or fruit in a still life. So positive shapes are the shapes of actual objects. Negative shapes are the areas between these objects. They are the areas that either surrounds the positive shapes or exist between them. The way positive and negative shapes act together creates the atmosphere of composition. Okay. So moving on to the dynamic shapes and the static shapes. So dynamic shapes are characterized by movement of the eye that flows smoothly from one area of the composition to another. So these describe movement or activity. While static shapes can appear still and decomposed, now they give off the feeling of being stable and resting.